Hello everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cracking. By a quick show of hands, can I see who's interested in photography most and who's interested in video most? So photography? Video? Okay, cracking. Fairly even spread. Well, an apology to start with. I'm going to start this presentation with hello and then quickly followed by a terrible picture of me. And the reason for that is that this is supposed to be a 2-hour presentation that I put together for some workshops, and then I realised about an hour ago that this is a half an hour slot. So what we're going to do is rattle through them. But basically I'm a photographer, and increasingly I'd kind of class myself as a YouTuber. And that's kind of very deliberate, and it's happened over a period of time, and YouTube very much informs my photography now and what I do as a living. And I found YouTube to be something that opens an awful lot of doors with my photography. So hopefully I'll be able to explain some of why and how in this next half an hour. But a quick bit of background on me. This is the first camera that I ever had that was kind of a camera for the purpose of trying to take good photos. Prior to this, I'd always had cameras as kind of point and shoots for nights out and for kind of holidays and stuff without really ever wanting to take photos or get properly into photography. I went travelling with this camera, really enjoyed it, came back, moved to London, and when I moved to London, I got quite disorientated with the process of photography because I really struggled to find original things to take photos of in a city full of kind of 10 million people. I'd find that I'd kind of set my tripod up, sort my composition out, get my exposure right, and then I'd look up and there'd be 3 other people taking exactly the same photo as me. This happened at about the same time that I found a guy who takes these photos. I say takes photos, they're very much made. So these are by a guy called Eric Johansson, a Swede, and those images are kind of a dozen stitched photos through probably hundreds of layers in Photoshop, and I discovered his work at about the same time that I discovered a few tutorials on how to use Photoshop, how to use layers, all that kind of thing. And it became clear that this was an option for me to be able to use photography to create original images, what I've been kind of worried about not being able to do when I'd first moved to London. So over the course of kind of 2-3 years, I started creating my own work in this kind of style with multiple layers, multiple images. And over the course of my kind of probably 4 years in London, this is what I did, and it became clearer and clearer that this is something that I wanted to do as a living. This is probably my favourite one. So this is, the background is a scene from Wales, close to where my folks live, and the tube station. I couldn't find a tube station that didn't have really harsh light on it and that didn't have loads of people around. So I basically had to go to Piccadilly Circus at 4 AM on a Sunday in the middle of summer, and yeah, I saw some sights that day. I carried this on when I moved to Sydney for 18 months, and I became even more sure that I wanted to do this as a career. And then I went travelling around New Zealand without Wi-Fi in a camper van for 9 weeks and nearly went mad. Then came back to the UK and started doing this kind of work commercially. So this is for a Mexican restaurant brand called Chipotle, and they just wanted burritos scattered all over things. This was for Adobe. I did this about last summer, I think. And I've also been kind of just working more on lifestyle adventure type shots because I found that composite work takes a lot of time sat at a desk editing, as do videos. And so I've kind of built this career for myself where I get to go to some of my favourite places, and I wasn't getting time to do it while I was doing both video and composite photography because I had spent so much time editing both. So now I'm kind of spending a lot of time working on, I guess, what you'd call kind of travel, lifestyle, adventure type photography. And all of that has been kind of facilitated in many ways by vlogging. Now vlogging is a really kind of broad term. I was introduced to it by 2 guys from, can't remember where in the UK, maybe Surrey, Ben Brown and Fun for Louis are the channels. And back in the day, probably 2013, 2014, these guys were making daily videos with point and shoots, and they were literally showing you them brushing their teeth, going to B&Q for planks of wood, the most mundane stuff, and yet I was finding that I was choosing to watch this over things on Netflix that had budgets of hundreds of millions of pounds, or sport And I came to the conclusion that it was because it was reality, it was very much real, it was another step onward from reality TV. That's been recognised by a lot of people now, I think, and so you now have kind of professional sports people, millionaires in many cases, who are turning to YouTube to kind of get their brand out to the world. Even, I think Anthony Joshua recently has been putting much more effort into his YouTube channel. I doubt he's doing the editing now. Casey Neistat, in many ways the kind of godfather of YouTube, went, of course, for about 3 years of doing daily vlogs. But vlogging to me is not a case of getting up and showing people brushing my teeth. Vlogging is a way to tell stories about my images. So when I was on that New Zealand trip in 2016, I decided that I wanted to have a go at making videos, and so I made some videos with quite questionable titles, and found much to my surprise that I absolutely loved the process. And once I got over the horror of pressing the upload button and thinking that people were going to see bits of my life that I hadn't really filmed before, and once I got over the horror of kind of holding a camera in public and people thinking I was mad, I really started to enjoy the process. And just over 2 years on, I now have a still relatively small but established channel where I make tutorials and travel videos and kind of random stuff about photography, I guess. I don't think you can really put my channel into a tight compartment. The question though is why bother? Because it takes a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of time to make videos. And the first thing I would say is that I bother because of story. So now, where's my phone? If you guys are anything like me, you'll notice that I get to see more photos than I've ever been able to see. The trouble is that everybody has that opportunity and everybody uploads their photos online, and as a consequence we have to share our attention with more people than we've ever had to share it with. So you end up looking at photos, kind of scrolling through, and if you really like a photo you might stop and look at it properly and double tap. If you really like it, you might dedicate 10 seconds to leaving a comment. But aside from that, a lot of photos, even incredible photos, have a lifespan of kind of 30 seconds. With YouTube, you get a chance to tell more of the story behind the photo. You get a chance to show how much of a pain it was to go to a location, how much of a pain it was to battle with the weather to keep your gear dry, and how much of a pain the editing process of the photo was. You get a chance to show all that stuff that you wouldn't be able to show if you didn't have something like YouTube. So that's one reason I really like it. The other reason is marketing. So on a bit more of a kind of business sense, I can now bypass a lot of kind of meetings that I used to have with people like art directors, because typically they want to see that you can kind of dress yourself in the morning, and when you have a YouTube channel they can broadly see that. You know, you get past that kind of necessary or otherwise necessary introductory process. And the third is income. So, you know, by way of YouTube ads or being able to sell things like prints or calendars, whatever it might be, off the back of people watching your videos, you get the chance to add it to your income streams, which if you're a freelancer is always very welcome. So the process of how. So writing, when it comes to writing, I know people who, with their YouTube videos, they're on kind of both ends of the spectrum. So I know some people who will write scripts kind of down to the word, and they'll stick to those scripts when they're recording their videos. And I know people who completely just wing it. I'd put myself probably somewhere right in the middle, and the reason I don't like to write my videos word for word is that, as I said before, the reason I think YouTube works and the reason people are so interested in people's quite mundane lives a lot of the time is that they feel real. And if you're reading and if you're kind of following a script, then you lose a lot of that. You lose a lot of the advantage that YouTube and kind of just being yourself actually gives you. So yeah, I prefer not to kind of go word for word on a video, but I do need to have bullet points. As anyone who's ever seen my videos will know, if I don't have bullet points, I'll just ramble for half an hour and I won't say anything useful. Production. So I can walk you through my kit. I could have done with a table really, I should have thought that, but so I use this currently. This is a Panasonic G80, but people, again, I know people all the way along the spectrum. Some use phones to record their entire videos, some use really expensive RED cameras, for example. I've chosen this for a few reasons. It has some things that I would suggest are necessities for vlogging, maybe not necessities, but they they make the process much easier. The first I'd suggest is a screen that points towards you so you can check you're in focus and that you've cleaned your teeth. The second is that this has stabilization, so I walk around quite clumsily. Again, you'll know that if you've watched any of my videos. And when I trip over a log, for example, and I have the stabilization on this, it's still usable footage. I just look a bit of an idiot. The other reason I really like this camera is that it has an input for a shotgun mic. Now this microphone, you might have seen these before if you watch a lot of YouTube. Basically, the advantage of these is that they'll prioritize sound from whatever's in front of them. So while I'm talking to it, there could be buses and sirens and people all around me, but it'll still prioritize the sound that's right in front of the camera, which is important if you're like in a city or even on a windy mountain, for example. So this primarily is what I use for vlogging. This is an 8 to 18 lens, a really wide lens. It's a micro four thirds lens, so full frame equivalent. It would be 16 millimeters at the wide end. So this is almost like a GoPro in field of view, but it allows me to kind of get whatever's in the background along with my face, which helps tell a story, I think, in many ways. So this is primarily what I use for vlogging. Obviously I carry a few batteries with it. Again, if you've watched lots of YouTube, you'll have seen people with kind of Joby GorillaPod type tripods that they'll have their hands on. I don't find that that's necessary when I've got such a wide angle lens on, but if I've got other lenses with me, then I'll sometimes use that. How are we doing for time? 10 minutes, jackpot. I have a selection of lenses that I'll also use for vlogs, but for stills, I use a G9, which is closely related to the G80, and it means that I can carry two bodies, use lenses on all of them for both videos and stills, and I can get up mountains without breaking my back. Because if I was using kind of two different systems or heavier cameras and heavier lenses, I wouldn't be able to do that. And it affords me the benefit of being able to carry a little drone with me as well, for example, as well as water and food and extra layers and all the other stuff you have to take out into the wilderness. If there are any questions, by the way, I'm happy to take them as we go, but I can also wait to the end. Editing. So again, people have choices when it comes to editing. Some people like to use Adobe Premiere Pro, as I do. Other people like to use Apple's Final Cut, and there are some other options, free options, good free options, if you so desire. I chose Premiere Pro just because I use all the other Adobe apps, and I found that Premiere Pro was probably the easiest thing that I've ever tried to learn, or easiest product from Adobe that I've ever tried to learn, much easier than Lightroom and Photoshop. So for a lot of people, the worry when they go into video is that they don't want to learn the editing process. For me, it didn't take too long at all in comparison to having to learn Photoshop and Lightroom. For my videos, I mean, again, if you've seen them, they're not the most kind of perfect or cinematic, but they still take me between 3 and 6 hours probably to edit a 10-minute video. That's kind of sometimes less if it's just a video where I'm talking to camera, and it's sometimes more if I've got lots of drone footage and I'm trying to select music and I'm working with titles and I've got other kinds of B-roll and whatever, or maybe I've done 4 takes because I keep fluffing my lines and I can't remember which take was good. So that's when it can get time consuming. It's by far my least favourite part of the process, and probably the reason that I like to spend all my other time outdoors, because it's just hell. It's not, I'm the sort of person that when they're working, that like to listen to music or like to have a podcast on or whatever, and you can't really do that when you're editing videos because it requires all of your attention, because it's also sound. So, hate editing, get rid of it. And uploading is the most simple part of the process. There's a bit of a debate in the YouTube community about whether you need scheduling, for example. Not scheduling, I do mean scheduling, schedules. So people suggest that you should have videos up at the same time every week or every day, whatever your upload frequency is. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think people now watch content in their own time, and it doesn't necessarily matter when it's uploaded. The argument that suggests that you need to worry about when you upload stuff is that according to YouTube's algorithm, it will show your video to more people the more people that have seen it in the first hour. So the more successful your video is, as soon as it's uploaded, the more people will see your video further down the line. And therefore people suggest that, you know, if you've got 90% of your viewers in the UK, then you're best off not uploading at 5 AM UK time. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for uploading. Typically my files, my 10-minute videos, they're all recorded 1080p. There's an argument for future-proofing videos by filming in 4K. For me, that's too much of a faff. I use a laptop because I travel a lot for all my editing, and shooting in 4K and editing in 4K is just too consuming a process. And I don't really buy the future-proof argument because, I mean, there are legendary movies that haven't suffered because they're not recorded in crazy resolution. So I don't worry too much about people not watching my videos, my 5-year-old videos in 5 years' time because they're not of the latest resolution. I think that's a bit of a red herring. Yeah, so typically my videos are kind of a gig in size by the time I've exported them, and depending on your internet connection, that could take 20 minutes to upload or a day to upload it in the worst case. But it's a really simple process on YouTube's end, and that's probably the easiest part of the process. So that's taken 15 minutes. So I've taken a 2-hour talk down to 15 minutes, which I didn't expect to do. But if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Are you shooting at 25 frames per second, or are you shooting at 30 because it's a US kind of platform?
So I shoot at 25, yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry, 50 usually.
Right. Because there's one train of thought that you ought to be doing it at 30 because it's a US-based system, that 30 or 60. And
yeah,
I'm kind of indifferent, really.
So it depends. It matters more, I think, indoors when you've got kind of lighting and stuff.
Flickering, yeah. And
flicker. I'm by no means an expert on it, but yeah, typically I choose 50 as opposed to 60 or 30. Yeah, I guess that should change when you go around the world. And I kind of, if I'm somewhere new and I'm particularly indoors, if I've done clips indoors, then I'll pay attention to, I'll make sure that I go and check a clip before I move on, in case I need to reshoot at a different frame rate. Yeah, but typically 50. Yep. Prime lenses, they certainly have their benefits. I mean, typically, what I find is that when I'm out and about, I will always use a zoom, just because it means that I can really easily switch from talking to the camera myself to filming a bit of B-roll that might be, I don't know, like a tree or something. If I was shooting a prime lens, it would be more difficult. That said, any videos that I kind of do indoors, so more kind of tutorial-based stuff that's just in an office or whatever, I use a prime for that because typically the light's quite low and it can look quite nice to throw unattractive stuff on your desk out of focus. So I quite like using both, but yeah, typically outdoor it zooms and indoor it's primes, I would suggest. That's what I do. Yep. Music, yes. So I use music from 2 companies. Epidemic Sound, I think that's about £10 a month, and it's a huge library of music. The other one is quite similar. I'd say the other one is Artlist, and I'd say that's slightly higher quality, but slightly less choice. So I found that my preference is slightly Epidemic Sound. I think they're both kind of similar in terms of price. I've had kind of offers from artists to be able to use their music, but I've had problems in the past with just getting strikes, and then you get those copyright strikes rescinded. It creates extra faff. And if you can use a website like Epidemic or Artlist, you just don't have to worry about it, basically. Yeah, and I find more often than not now, I can kind of, particularly on Epidemic, I can find what I'm looking for relatively quickly, but it still can be a bit of a time-consuming process.
What do you find like the best?
Oh, perfect.
What do you find in like the best sort of like a video length for an average video time, and what sort of like is the best like average frequency of uploading, say, in a month? Do you find is like the best place to go and for like the viewers?
Yeah, good question. I'm by no means an expert. The best answer I've ever been given is that a video should be as long as it needs to be. So I think the YouTube community went through a process or a phase even, where there was a rumour, I think it was only a rumour, that YouTube was promoting videos that were longer than 10 minutes more than it was shorter videos. And what that meant was that you saw loads and loads of videos that were just over 10 minutes that quite clearly only needed to be 3 minutes. But ultimately that's going to affect people negatively, because one of the biggest metrics for the YouTube algorithm is watch time. So if 95% of people are watching 95% of your video, YouTube knows that that's incredible content and it's going to throw it out to more people. Conversely, if people are getting onto a video and in the first 30 seconds they're going, no, I don't like this, then they're going to suppress it. Because ultimately YouTube just wants you to spend more time on the site so that you watch more adverts. That's the end game for YouTube. So the most important metric is making sure that people are watching as much of your video as possible. So, you know, if a video can be done in 2 minutes, then great. If it takes 30, then that's fine as well. I'm, you know, really guilty a lot of the time of kind of waffling on, as I said. So I'm a fine one to talk, but I find that, you know, as long as it needs to be, basically, is what I'd suggest.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. Anyone else?
So are you still doing corporate jobs as well as YouTube, and what's the time balance that you're split between, say, an average week?
Yeah, so that's changing all the time, and as I've found that my enjoyment of YouTube has gone up, it's become a much bigger part of my career, basically. So YouTube has got to the point now where I've kind of, again, I've got all things being relative, I've got quite a small audience, but it's big enough to sustain me by things like print sales and ad views and doing sponsored videos and things, to the point where I don't need to take corporate jobs that I don't enjoy. So it's an incredible position to be in. It's taken a long time to get to, but I now don't have to do things that I don't particularly want to do, partly because I live up north and I don't need to earn loads of money, but also because I've made a choice to kind of prioritise this as opposed to worrying too much about kind of trying to find loads and loads of clients. So luckily it's kind of a case of YouTube time going up and time of other stuff going down. Where am I based? I'm based in the Peak District. I've moved around quite a bit in recent years, but I'm kind of just between Manchester and Sheffield at the moment. Long term, I imagine I'll go back to Wales. That's where my parents and family are, and that's an awesome place to take photos when it's not raining, which is hardly ever.
Not the most technical of questions. I was just wondering how you mentioned at the start, kind of like getting over talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And just how you manage to sort of get out of that mindset.
Yeah.
That freaks me out.
It's horrible. It's really hard. What was best for me actually was I went to London to just see some friends, and I basically forced myself to talk to a camera while I was kind of in the middle of London. And the first thing I noticed within about 2 minutes was that nobody cared. Everyone's got their own problems, everyone's got their own things to do. And I had this opinion of myself that everyone would care what I was up to, and I was quickly disappointed because nobody had a problem at all. What I do notice is that I'm still very conscious of it when I'm somewhere that's quiet. So if I'm like walking around a lake or I'm up a mountain and then I see one other person who's got nothing else to look at, then I'm really, really self-conscious of it. But in busier places, I don't mind at all. I'm kind of, it still bothers me to an extent. I'm not sure that ever goes away. I mean, maybe it just depends on what your personality type is, but it definitely is a case of practice, I'd suggest.
Do you go for a kind of a hook on a suspense hook as a lead in, then the sort of the main body and then a conclusion?
That would probably be the way to do it, but I'm not sure. I don't think I write tightly enough to do that.
Because I have a little channel of my own,
yeah.
But in the first 10 seconds, it's something of suspense to get people interested.
Yeah.
Then a little 6-second intro, then the body of the video with the conclusion at the end.
Yeah.
And you try to keep, because you know that you're going to lose 30% in the first 20 seconds, aren't you? You know, that's the way people are.
When I remember, I basically try to do that. Yeah, but that's definitely the thing to do. Yeah.
My question's related to the other one. if you see somebody walking towards you and there's only you and him or her,
Yeah.
you try talking to them and introducing them to your video.
No. I'll be completely honest, I'm still in complete disbelief that the figures that you see on videos are anything other than numbers, and that the comments aren't just bots. It's mad to me that this whole kind of industry and ecosystem exists, and I kind of still walk around with the opinion that why would people spend their time watching what I consider quite mundane videos, even when I've done it myself, and that's the reason that I do it as well. So the answer would be no, but maybe I should. Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I probably should. Any other questions? Yep. Oh, sorry. Just got the mic.
So on average, how many years does it actually take to build it up, really? Does it depend on, you vlogging every day, or the quality, the frequency?
Yeah, I'd say quality is the main thing. I know people that have gone from sort of 1,000 subscribers to 1 million in a matter of months if they're in an industry, or if they're talking about things that people have got enough interest in and they're doing a good enough job of it. Someone described it to me as like a snowball. When you start uploading videos, YouTube might show it to 1 or 2 people here and there, and it's really, really slow, and you've kind of got to be willing to put up with, I'd suggest, 6 months or a year of nobody watching what you're talking about, and kind of just expect that that's going to be the case before anything really happens. And then kind of as 1 or 2 more people kind of tell their friends, and then they tell their friends, it does become a snowball. But it can be a really slow process. And as I say, I'm only recently, after kind of 2 years of spending an awful lot of time on videos, and probably close to 150 videos, only now am I kind of at a point where I can dedicate a lot of my time to this as work. So yeah, it's a really slow process, and I think expecting anything other than that is probably setting yourself up for failure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And how many subscribers have you got now?
About 60,000. So that for me kind of works as a level. Before I started doing it, I just assumed that if you're going to make a living, you'd need 500,000, 1 million, 10 million, whatever it might be. I certainly didn't think it would be possible to kind of to do what I'm doing now, and to be able to spend the amount of time I do on it with kind of a relatively small number. So it's quite heartening and good to know.
So, are you producing weekly or monthly, or?
Yeah, so I try and get a video out weekly. I found in the past that I've aimed for 2 videos a week, and the quality just kind of dropped. Conversely, other people seem to manage it, but for me, I found it too difficult. Other people I was speaking to, does anybody know of Sean Tucker? Sean Tucker Fountain? So I was speaking to him yesterday, and he was kind of saying that, or he's said to me in the past that he's kind of focused for 1 video a month, and making that as good as it can be. And so it's really a case of what works for you. I mean, it stands to reason that you could make a video potentially 4 times as good if you had 4 times as long in it, but it kind of it's a point of diminishing returns to some extent. So yeah, I've decided that for me at the moment, as things stand, 1 a week is kind of what I'm able to manage.
Hi.
Hi.
How far ahead do you do your storyboarding then? So if you're looking at kind of 1 a week, 1 quality, what do you sort of plan 6 weeks ahead of yourself, and then perhaps just move it around a bit?
Oh, I wish, yeah. I'd love to be in a position where I kind of had 3 or 4 videos ahead of time. What typically happens though is on Friday evening, I say some swear words and spend all of Saturday trying to cobble a video together, as you can probably tell. So yeah, it's always a case of things coming up and getting in the way. I've found that seems to be the case when you freelance. Things just take up your time without them meaning to, and all of a sudden you've got a video on your hands.
And as a kind of a successful vlogger, what would you avoid as a vlogger if you could give people 3 options to stay away from and be wary of? Probably
the trap of quantity being important. There's always the fact that you earn from views means that you want to chase views, and therefore you want to do as many videos as possible. The reality is that it's ever kind of more crowded space, and therefore quality is becoming more and more important. And even if that only means one video every 2 months, I would take that over one video every day if it's not particularly good. That said, you know, for short-term gains, people, including me in the past, haven't taken that advice. So yeah, I'd suggest quality is king.
What age group is your audience?
So my audience is spread across the age groups. It's largely 25 to 34 though. I can't remember the percentage. I'd say maybe 60%. But that differs even in kind of the same even in the same vertical. So I know other photography YouTubers who've got a much older demographic. Some have
Is there
got much
any way
younger.
you can corner that? There's not.
Any way you can corner it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's random, is it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know why certain people are drawn towards it. I don't know if it's because of the algorithm, what kind of people are shown, what videos in the algorithm. I would assume that it's largely about things like titles and the amount of energy you have in your videos. You know, if you've got, say, for example, 30-minute Lightroom tutorials, that's going to appeal to kind of a much different person than a really quick 3 tips for X, Y, and Z. So, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I wish I did. Yeah. We got time for more?
Just one.
Just one?
Two things. Firstly, I'm nearly 62.
Thank you.
Second thing is,
Vlogging. So I was watching videos of people who had a point and shoot camera and not much else, and who seemed to be kind of living the dream, and I was intrigued. And so when I went to New Zealand, I thought that's a perfect time to do it, because I had this block of 2 months where I thought the majority of days I'm going to be doing something interesting, and if I can't make a video there, I'll never be able to make a video. And so it gave me the kind of confidence to go for it. And then the hardest moment was pressing upload on the first video, because I thought, my friends are going to see this, my families are going to see this, will they think it's weird? Like, and some of them probably did, but they were all very nice. And 2 years later, I am kind of living what I want to do, and I don't have any complaints. So yeah, it's kind of, I gave myself a push basically, and I'm really pleased I did. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll stick around if you've got any other questions.